So Amy suggested that I message Matt Rushton, who is a local photographer in Cumbria, since I've been having a lot of trouble trying to find other interviews with photographers who can answer my questions. I think I've messaged about 10 people now. I've only had one interview before with photography, with a photography business called Busy Bean Photography, but unfortunately, she didn't answer all of my questions that I wanted her to answer. So I need to be able to get some more information about what I want to know, and I have to ask someone else for it because she didn't answer all the questions. So I kind of sent a little message to Matt Rushton, and like I said, he's a local photographer in Cumbria and he takes lovely landscape photos that I think are very creative, and they're not postcard photography, um, if you know what I mean. They're not just snapshots. I think he takes real care with how like his composition of the kind of photos. So this is Derwentwater. Everyone takes pictures on here, but he managed to make it more artistic somehow, which I find very interesting. Um, so that's why I decided to message him. So as you can see here, I sent him a very quick message about who I am and why I want him to kind of answer my questions. So then I sent him over the questions, and then he said that will it be okay if I can email my answers to you because it could be too many characters for a direct message. So I sent him over my email. So his answer to my first question was, I started with video work as a hobby when I was about 13. By the time I was 19/20, the first load of DSLRs with video capability were emerging, so I got a 550D, mainly for the video, but I started dabbling with photography from there. So I found that answer quite interesting because, like me, I was very interested with films growing up and how they were made and so on. But then because of films, I started being more interested in photography, and I feel like he kind of felt the same. So he was kind of looking at kind of recording and stuff like that. I then asked him who is his biggest inspiration, and he said there are too many inspirations just to say one, so I'll give you a few. And the first one he mentions is Sean O'Connell, so Sean Penn's character in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Now, I found this quite interesting as he says here, and I quote, I think fictional characters can inspire just as much as people and events in real life, so I can put him here. I found that quite interesting because I find that a lot of fictional characters inspire a lot of people to be able to pursue their dreams. So I found that quite interesting as well. So this is Sean Penn's character in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. So he is a cameraman. I've never seen the film myself, so I wouldn't be able to know. But he kind of goes into the wilderness and just takes pictures, and he just enjoys, himself being able to take pictures whenever he wants to with his camera and just go around wandering, really. He then mentions, I'm going to butcher this, Elia Locardi, and he says here that Elia's final images aren't always to my taste, but the way he manipulates moments in time and produces his images with blending techniques has influenced me a lot. And he says also that his workflow has probably guided him more than any other. So this is Elia McCarty's kind of final pictures, and I think they're really beautiful actually. I can kind of see why Matt would say they're not kind of to his taste, because I feel like Matt's a bit more kind of down-to-earth artistic more than beautiful artistic, if that makes sense. But I do think that this Elia Locardi takes really lovely photos, especially landscape and cityscapes and stuff like that. So I can see why this photographer has influenced Matt so much. He then mentions Chris Burkard. So he says here that he's just the boss when it comes to landscape/adventure photography in the social media community, in my opinion. The combination of awesome landscapes with human elements doing incredible things is great. I can't get enough of it. So this is Chris Burkard's photographs, and compared to Matt's and to the other photographer before Elia, I can really see that he's quite different to them, really. Somehow his photos are a little bit more crisp, rather than kind of dreamlike and surreal, quite whimsical in my opinion, with Elia Locardi. With his, they're a lot more realistic somehow and a lot more crisp, which I like very much. I think his photos are beautiful. So I can see also why he inspires Matt as well. Matt also mentions a final photographer who inspires him, and he says here that Phil is my favourite local photographer. He also says that for me, he's the one who leads the way in landscape photography around the Lake District. You could take a photograph tomorrow morning in a location never photographed before, and in 6 months, you'll have seen 50 photos from other photographers in the same place. So I suppose that Phil Buckle is a really influential person when it comes to landscape photography in the Lake District, which I find really, really interesting. So this is Phil Buckle's kind of website showing his photographs, and I can really see why Matt likes him so much. Mostly because in the Lake District, it's very hard not to take a good picture because it's just so beautiful. So you have to really try and put yourself in like a headspace, trying, making it artistic and beautiful because people will always take a good photograph in the Lake District just because it's so beautiful. So you need to really think about your composition and why you're taking that photo and what is the story of that photo. And I think that's why Phil Buckle is such kind of an influential person in the Lake District when it comes to landscape photography, because he really does take it to the next level, and everyone who sees his photos are inspired by him to go and take photographs, which I think is really great. So I then asked him what's his favourite type of photography and why, and he answers with landscape slash like adventure photography because of the place it takes you. And then for question 4, I asked him what camera do you use and why, and he says that he uses a Canon 5D Mickey, only because I was already investing in the Canon system with the first DSLR I bought, 550D. My dad also had like a 5D, and at the time, so I knew I could rob a few of his lenses. I actually feel a little let down by Canon in recent years, though I'd switch to a Sony system if it was financially possible for me, and he says it's really not. So Canon is usually it's quite cheap really for what it is, which I think is quite good because a lot of photographers aren't able to get Sonys, which are really quite expensive. And with Canons, they are fairly priced in my opinion, and Sonys are really expensive because they're just so good. So I then asked him, how did you get into the photography business in the first place? And he says again through video. I got a job filming football matches, and that involved into photographing like games and events. So he's very much into like adventure photography. So it's kind of like sporting photography, but kind of mountain biking, freelancing, kind of walking, hiking, I assume. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research on that, but I think that's a really cool way of like photography. I think it sounds really, really cool. So I then asked him, why do you think photography has made such a big impact on our society slash culture? He says here, and I quote, so many reasons. It's a great way to document things. Before photographs, people had to paint things like portraits. Photographs come along and you have an undeniably true representation. Go from there. I think it's blown up a bit in social media frenzy we're in right now. Everyone can get their work seen by thousands of people now, which wasn't the case 10 years ago. Also, people having cameras on their phones, more people producing photos, more people getting interested in taking and looking at photos. So I completely agree with him about the way photos are just like photograph and cameras are just so accessible now to everyone, and that in the past, the only way people can have like a self-portrait like in like a family gallery or something like that in big houses was being able to get painted. But with kind of cameras and photography, you can have like a really true representation of yourself, because even if a painting is so good, it can never exactly replicate the image exactly like a camera can. I also agree with him that social media has opened a lot of doors for photographers and wannabe photographers and people who are just interested in photography in general. Mostly because it's just so accessible, like with photography nowadays and cameras, because anyone can see your photos, especially on Instagram, which is like a social media software that anyone can use really. and anyone can see your photos, and it's just really, really accessible. I also asked him, do you think photography is an integral part of politics? Please explain. So I quote here again, it depends on what you class as politics. Politics are everywhere in everything. Photographs can be used to sway people's opinion in any situation. That may become less and less the case as time goes on and people understand more and more how images can be staged/manipulated. I think that's very true, especially because of Photoshop, where you can kind of change images and stuff like that. But I definitely agree with him that photographs can sway people to one opinion or another, especially in newspapers and in magazines and on articles on kind of the internet and stuff like that. So photographs can really sway people's opinions and kind of put an image in someone's mind of kind of a political kind of standing or something like that, really. So I then asked him, what is your favourite photograph/series of photographs that you have produced and why? So I quote him here again, I have no idea. I can get quite excited about an image and then go off it very quickly. Right now I'm quite pleased with one I took of a church under the milky sky, but ask me again in a couple of months and I might tell you that I hate that image. Generally speaking, I like photographing buildings at very local, like very rural locations, under the night sky, and those are the images I like most. They are quite technically demanding though, so you can easily change your mind on them when you notice their flaws. The last question I asked him was, what does photography mean to you? So he says here that it means everything, but if it were taken away, I'll just do something else. It's what I choose to do, but I don't think I'm overly attached. So with Matt, photography is a very big part of his life. He really, really loves it, but he's not completely obsessed by it, I think. And if someone said to me, oh, you never can do photography again, I'd be upset by it because I enjoy it so much. But you'd kind of have to go and do something else. It's just what you would do, I suppose. So overall, I found Matt's answers really, really interesting and very helpful, mostly because he's given me some really, really good ideas about kind of different photographers and local photographers that I think are really good landscape kind of photographers, which I think is great. And he answered all of my questions and given me some really, really useful answers. And he kind of helped me understand his opinion on how photography has made such a big impact on our society's culture. How does it kind of inspire people? How does it kind of help with politics and stuff like that? So overall, he's been very, very helpful for me. So I'm really, really grateful.